Okay. The theme, sickness and healing. This is a very challenging topic. It has particularly been for me to really get what the Course is saying about sickness. And I can hear from your sharing that many of you really get that it is the mind. And as I said earlier, I know that it's of the mind intellectually, but there's a big part of me that thinks there are causes out there, right, if I'm honest. I think the best way to do it is to read a couple of quotes, several quotes actually, and particularly from one of my favorite books. This is my second favorite book after Disappearance of the Universe, or Gul Air in Danish. Many of you know this because you got them 2 or 3 years ago. This is by Pauline Edwards. She writes very well about her own journey. It's very useful to hear what people have experienced around this. So I'll start actually with this is a quote from the Course in the manual, chapter section 5 of the manual. The acceptance of sickness as a decision of the mind for a purpose for which it would use the body is the basis of all healing. A patient decides that this is so and he recovers.
Oh. Can you repeat it?
A patient decides that this is so, that it's a decision of the mind, and then he recovers. If he decides against recovery, he will not be healed. This is what the placebo effect is. You all know the placebo effect. You can fool the ego by giving a pill that has nothing in it, believing that it will work, and it works for some people. So clearly placebo indicates to all of us that it's of the mind. What's interesting about the medical profession is that the placebo is an irritation for them. It gets in the way because it kind of disagrees with everything that they believe in. So they dismiss it. It's an irritation that they like to be without. Who is the physician? Only the mind of the patient himself. The outcome is what he decides that it is. This is all the Course in Miracles, by the way, this section. And this is a very interesting part. Special agents, that could be pills, it could be massage, it could be any form of therapy or something that you give to the body. Special agents seem to be ministering to him, in other words, being given to him, yet they but only give form to his own choice. He chooses them in order to bring tangible form to his desires. So again, it's a form of placebo. If I believe that a certain therapy will work, I will, even not consciously, but even unconsciously, I will find a therapist who just says the right words or just gives me the right pill or food, diet, or whatever it is, that will convince my unconscious that I'm going to get better, and so I do. So special agents, these things from outside, seem to be ministering to him, yet they but give form to his own choice. So on some level, really not on this level, but on the higher mind's level, you've already chosen to be sick and also to get healed, if you get healed. So when I'm ready for that to happen, I will find something or someone out there that will reflect that choice. He chooses them in order to bring tangible form, in other words, something of form, to my desire. And it is this they do and nothing else. And this is a really hard bit for the ego to get. Like, I think diet is going to help this problem that I have with this valve, and I also know that it's of the mind, so there's that confusion. And it is this they do and nothing else. The Course is very black and white about these things. They're not actually needed at all. The patient could merely rise up without their aid and say, I have no more need for this. There is no form of sickness that would not be cured at once. The problem is that we're not ready for this. So we need things out there, we think. Alternative practitioners, health practitioners in particular, also believe there is a direct link between the health of the body and states of the mind and emotions. So many of us think that what we think are core beliefs are causing certain illnesses, right? And so we work with our core beliefs. They might say, for example, that fear is what caused a problem with the kidneys, or grief is what caused a problem with the heart. This kind of thinking, though it makes sense for a figure in the dream, does not go to the real cause of illness. So we're getting close, but it's not the real cause. There's something underneath that. And this is why sickness has the use for the body. As you will have heard me say, and the Course says, purpose is everything. There's always a purpose for the body, for sickness, for the world. The Course says it is a decision made in the mind to push away the truth, to push away God, to push away love.
That's a core belief.
This is, well, it is a core belief, but it's the truth. This is the purpose of sickness, and the body, to push away truth. That's why we're here in a body. That's the whole purpose of the world, is to push away truth, to hide. And so sickness is, you could say, another level of hiding, because it keeps us focused on the body. Believe me, when you're in pain, when you have symptoms, you only think of the body and how I can get out of this. Like you were saying, this fear of this will never go away. And I didn't actually say that, but that's also the fear that I've had with this thing that's been going on in my digestive system, is that the symptoms will never go away because they're so awful. So awful. So this kind of thinking, though it makes sense to a figure in the dream, does not go to the real cause of sickness, which the Course says is the decision made in the mind to push away truth. The real fear belongs to the ego, the fear that we might look inside and discover the truth of our innocence, and that we are spirit and not bodies, and that there is no need to suffer punishment for a sin we have not committed. The purpose of sickness is to keep us focused on the body and away from the decision-making mind. The mind that's choosing all of this. It serves also to prove that we are innocent victims. Remember, the Course says, this is the ego script, I'm the innocent victim and you're the bad guy. Anything out there. So it serves to prove that we're innocent victims, that something, people, viruses, etc., did it to us. It's a way of pushing love and God away and confirming our sense of separation and individuality. This is the purpose of sickness. And what I think I've been experiencing is that the more work that I have been doing on the inner, the ego is really getting threatened, and so it's come up with this very, very clever thing in my body. I'll explain a little bit about what it is. It's a valve between the large and small intestine. It's supposed to only open when the food's been partly digested and then goes through to the next large intestine. When you have an imbalance there, it stays open, and the lower stuff comes back up into the small intestine, and you get poisoned. And I know this is what's been happening because I've had days where I have felt poisoned. A healer in England said this is to do with self-poisoning, which quite literally. So again, it's a core belief of self-poisoning which comes up the ego gets threatened, so it really comes up with some very, very deep beliefs to keep you here in the body, to keep you focused on the body and keep thinking that it's caused by something out there. So it has really challenged me in the last 6 months to really look at this, interestingly enough. And the Course also says that really the mind is projecting this whole body. This really is an answer, I think, to your question, Niels. The whole body is a projection of the mind. So anything going on in the body must also be a projection of the mind. It must be.
But it's not like to be understood as a, then you shouldn't do anything. It's not like that, right?
And thank you. This, you mean, they shouldn't do anything to help
Yeah,
you?
I mean like with sickness in general, like you can,
This, well, I think Pauline mentions this a lot, but a lot of students, particularly Course in Miracles students, they get that it's all of the mind, so they ignore the body and they deny all the pain and discomfort that's going on in their body, and they don't do anything about it and spend years searching for the core beliefs that's causing this, and it doesn't get better. And that's not what the Course is saying. Jesus is very gentle in his teaching. He says, we're so afraid of a miraculous healing that in order not to bring up too much fear, we have to take interim measures. So sure, I'm doing all I can to keep this valve not being irritated while the causes of my mind is still operating on some very deep level, because I don't feel like I'm poisoning myself on my mind level. This is way unconscious stuff, right? And we need to acknowledge that and do whatever we want to feel comfortable. When I feel good, I can work more on my mind. When I feel bad, fuck the mind. All I want to know is how can I get rid of this pain, right? That's why it's such a great distraction from going home. So look after our bodies. It's a great question. Do whatever we can, but do it peacefully. Not that everything, all my emotions are caused by food. No. It seems like when you eat certain foods, you get certain emotions coming up. But they're not being caused by the food, they're being triggered by the food, which is totally different. They're already in our unconscious, and we've set it up so it looks like, see, the whole ego script is set up to make it look like there's something out there. I'd like to share also how I've been looking in the wrong place. I was getting the discomfort right down the bottom, so I was looking, I even went to a specialist, and he said there's nothing wrong, I can't help you. And so the ego for 6 months was looking in the wrong place. And then when I was in England on the festival, this friend of mine, David, he said, I've just had this wonderful session with a kinesiologist. She's great. So I just got this was like the sign, the message for me to go and see this lady. So I went, and before we even sat down, she said, I think you have an IC valve problem. Like, she knew straight away. And everyone I spoke to on the camp knew about this ileocecal valve, which I'd never heard of. Never heard of it in my whole life, This thing about core beliefs is a little tricky, so I'd like to really look at this. We're choosing separation. This is underneath everything. But how we choose separation is often very difficult to know that we're doing it. And this is why it's good to identify our core beliefs. So there I go, choosing separation in the form of self-poisoning, for example. There I go, choosing separation in the form of unworthiness or whatever it is. So it's the core is the choosing separation. And we need to identify the ways that we do that so that we spot them. Because this is about looking.
Spot them or stop.
Spot them,
Spot.
yeah, and then give them up to spirit. Shanna.
Yeah, I just want to mention that I've had allergies all my life or
Right.
something, and I have the same experience as you, that it's psychosomatic. I just couldn't find out what was it that I didn't take care of, so I should be healed. So, but actually I just chose a totally different way, that I just got acupuncture, or what it's called, needles in me, which I didn't even really believe, but I tried it anyway. And she tried one form and it didn't work. And then I came back and said after 3 times, it doesn't really work. Okay, I'll try another form, and she did that and it disappeared. So sometimes it's like I have been trying to, it's the mind, it's something, and it, so I don't totally believe in it, because I could see that actually the energy system or something, there was actually a cure, and it just disappeared. It was not nothing about the mind. I didn't have to be seeing anything.
Special agents seem to be ministering to him,
Yeah, and I
yet they but give form to his own choice. He chooses them in order to bring tangible form to his desires. It is this they do and nothing else. This is what the Course says,
yeah.
right? The Course tells us that the healing does not come from the healer. Rather, it comes from the mind of the patient who decided to be ill in the first place. Sickness is a decision and serves a purpose. Anything that brings attention to the body serves the ego's purpose, which is to ensure that we continue to identify with our separated selves as bodies and not as spirit. For some patients, illness becomes part of who they are, especially those suffering from long-term or chronic illnesses. As long as the illness serves the ego's purpose, no amount of energy or healing skill will heal the patient. If we want to hang on to this, it doesn't matter what you do. To attempt to remove the illness before the patient is ready is basically a waste of time and resources. All healing remains in the mind of the patient, where the decision to be ill was made in the first place. Oh. When the patient is ready to heal, they will consult a practitioner, whether allopathic or alternative. It does not matter at all which form they choose, and they will obtain the healing they seek. So hopefully I got to the point when I was in England last month that I see no more value in this sickness. I've had enough of it. And then the healer shows up and gives form to my choice. And she finished up, but this is why no healing approach works all the time with all patients. So you might use acupuncture on someone else and it doesn't work. I've had acupuncture with no effects at all. Tapping doesn't work for me either, even though I kind of do it. This is also why some patients appear to miraculously recover from life-threatening conditions while others do not. It'd be nice just to talk a little bit about the therapist's role. Now we see it's got nothing to do with the therapist and all to do with the patient. What's the therapist got to do? So she says, the healer simply facilitates the patient's desired outcome. Your wish is my command. So as rebirthers or any other healer, we're just waiters and waitresses, we're servers. We do whatever they want, give them tissues, give them
I want my money back.
Yeah.
It stands in the book here, right? Just read this, okay?
I've got you on record saying that before, I think.
I want my money back!
I've got it on video.
So he can come back next year for the next course.
Yeah.
In the end, it's the same.
It's the same. When illness no longer serves the ego's purpose, the illness goes away. Medicine or therapy is needed only because the idea of spontaneous healing will be too frightening to the patient.
That's a quote, isn't it?
Yeah, more or less. And then she goes on, the best approach for the health practitioner is simply to practice their profession simply for the love of it. And that's why I do this. I don't really have any expectations of whether you guys get better or not.
Oh, you bugger.
And if I do have any expectations or disappointments, then I'll look at that, you see. Patients will come when they are ready to be healed. That way the burden of healing is not on the healer. So when you're being a rebirther, it's not about you doing anything, really, Ocean.
So when you're ready, you will find some healer, but you don't just heal. You have to find somebody who looks like they're healing me.
It will reflect your choice.
It will be like that, or is it? Could I go to the woods and get know and kind of just let go of my sickness and then get sick and then get healed?
Yes, of course you can.
So I don't have to go.
Hey.
I have to be ready first and then go to a doctor. Or
In theory, absolutely, we could just change our mind right now.
But you're using the wood as your agent.
Yes,
You could just do it at home.
Yeah.
So,
But because we unconsciously have the belief that the cause is out there, we have to go to someone out there to change it. This is why it's so subtle.
It's about being willing to.
Yeah.
Is the Course an agent? The Course in Miracles, can that be your agent?
Yes,
It's an ongoing.
absolutely.
But can I add something? As a therapist, I also feel like my role is to just be the space and ask the right questions about, like, what does it give you? What does this sickness give you?
Great.
And just look into it, look at it gently. And a lot of people are like, okay, I didn't create this, but just keep looking at it with your client and just, what would you be without this sickness?
Yeah.
Mm.
And that may not work with everyone. It depends on how much fear. This is why there is no right or wrong way for everybody. It's like when you're with a client, just get to stillness, and then if you hear a sentence come into your mind, it's probably from your right mind, and it could be a question. The idea is to meet the patient or the client where they are, and then hold their hand and invite them to the next step. Maybe not even with words. Since the function of a student of A Course in Miracles is simply to be a representative for the other way of thinking, the practice of healing, in whichever form it takes, becomes an opportunity for the healer to practice looking through the non-judgmental lens of the Holy Spirit. While watching for thoughts of separation, pity, judgment, or any thought that bear a hint of differences, it is in effect the mind of the healer that is being healed. So when we're a therapist, this is, another opportunity for us to heal ourselves. Since minds are joined, the patient will take whatever learning is desired at that particular time. It's not the function of the healer to determine what the patient needs to learn, nor how they will be healed. That is between the patient and the Holy Spirit. It is the healer's function to look with the eyes of vision, to look beyond the body, and to see that we are split off parts of the same decision for separation. So, if someone comes to you and they have a sickness, our job, as best we can, is to overlook our own body and therefore overlook the body of the other. Not to focus on the sickness, but to focus on the Christ in them.